Davy Jones. You may have known him as one of the monkeys. I read his autobiography, which is really the place to begin if you want to figure out rising signs, and he mentions that when he was 16, he quit school to become an apprentice jockey. He wanted to race horses. That seemed to be his first love. Now, with someone who has that much of a love for a sport involving horses that he'd make a career of it, I would look for a strong Sagittarius influence in the chart. He could either have Sagittarius rising or his ruler may be in Sagittarius. As it turns out, he did have one planet in Sagittarius, and that was Mercury. Davy Jones was not tall, and Sagittarius rising is almost always tall. He also did not seem to have a Sagittarius personality. Therefore, I would kick out Sagittarius rising. If we're on the right track, that only leaves Gemini or Virgo as his rising sign, both of which are ruled by Mercury. He does have a Mercury look to him. So which one is it, Gemini or Virgo? A way to find out is to consider, do you think Davy Jones was an introvert or an extrovert? Because if an introvert, the rising sign would be Virgo. If an extrovert, it would be Gemini. Which do you think he was?
What do you propose to do now? Do you propose to stay together or go individually, or what are you going to do?
I couldn't tell. Nothing has been laid out for us. We have no plans, really. The only plans we have for this next year is that the TV show has been dropped. We could have gone another year. NBC said, we'll pick you up and you can go another year. But the guys were fed up of doing the whole Beatle thing and the Dick Lester and running around and being funny. So we want to do 3 specials, and we're going to do 3 specials to show that we're not just a rock and roll group that stands up and plays. We're an act, and we can't only do little skits on the TV, similar to what you're doing. That's all, like we're copying things that you did 10 years ago, or, like the Marx Brothers were doing it 10 years ago, so the Beatles, and Dick Lester weren't the first. There was somebody before the Marx Brothers, I should think, Three Stooges or whatever. We can only go as far as the public will take us, like the people that are paying the money to see us, or the people that want to look at us on the TV. We can only go as far as they want us to go.
So based on that, do you think Davy Jones was an introvert or an extrovert? Well, if you said extrovert, you would be wrong. Right! So Davy Jones comes up Gemini rising. Let's look at his chart. Notice Venus in the 7th. Planets in the 7th, well aspected, make a person popular. He had that Venus sextile Jupiter aspect, which makes a person very fun-loving. Davy Jones was the most popular of the monkeys, especially with his ruler Mercury conjunct the 7th. He was good-looking, had a great personality, and was usually the love interest in episodic romances. He was the spokesman for the band when they reunited. Sun in the 8th house. He mentions one time he received a royalty check of $240,000. That explains where he got the money for all his various investments that he lost out on. One investment in particular was renting a warehouse for $2,000 a month and dividing it up into 26 separate stalls to have an indoor flea market. He named it The Street. Monthly rent was 10% of the vendor's profit. It was on an honor system. On the eve of his grand opening, the Los Angeles Fire Department closed him down because all the wood from the remodeling was considered a fire hazard, so he paid $75,000 to replace the wood with metal. 3 months after opening up, he had yet to receive a rent check, so he walked away from it. I don't know if you would call it a gambling addiction, but Davy Jones lost most of his theater money playing poker once he got to America. He started out playing with the rest of the cast and crew under the stage in the basement. He was kicked out for being underage to gamble. Then he discovered another place. It was a knock 3 times gambling den. By the time Thursday came around, he'd have enough money for breakfast, 78 cents, and was broke until Friday night when they got paid. and then the cycle would start all over. And what's that Uranus opposition Mercury all about? Ward Sylvester was his first manager, who discovered Davy when he was doing Oliver on Broadway. And it was this man who led him to the Monkees opportunity. So everything was fine when Davy had this man as his manager. But then Sylvester became associate producer of the Monkees, and Davy was left on his own. After this, Davy got a whole string of shyster managers who were only in it for a fast buck. One memorable manager was Al Kahn. Davy gave him $63,000 to buy a house in cash. After living in the house for a few months, Davy gets a bank statement that says money is being withdrawn for mortgage payments. He asks Al Kahn about this, and Kahn claimed he put the money in orange groves in Florida, saying it was a great investment. Davy never saw an orange, and now he had mortgage payments. One day, he's at the office and Kahn is out of the country. Two girl staffers tell Davy what Kahn's been up to with Davy's money. This infuriates him, and he decides to withdraw all his money from the joint bank account he shared with Kahn. The problem is his bank is in New York, which is closed by now since New York is in a different time zone than LA. So he decides to put the money in one of the girls' bank accounts until Monday, when he could transfer it to his own account and fire his manager. Come Monday, the girl is gone. Here is a letter from Screen Gems to explain why they cannot pay the Monkees for an entire tour. February 1, 1969, regarding Far East Personal Appearance Tour. Dear Mr. Jones, we are enclosing a final accounting of the Far East tour that took place last fall. You will note that the tour report attached reflects a net loss and, consequently, there will be no distribution due you on this tour. If you have any questions with regard to the attached, please advise. Sincerely, Screen Gems. Here's their accounting of the tour. $68,500 for Australia, $90,000 for Japan, a total of $158,500 income. They have itemized out deductions such as cost of advertising, $6,500, cost of equipment rental, $8,500. Now what I don't understand is that they actually deducted the salaries of the monkey actors, which comes to approximately $68,000. How can they deduct that figure when they didn't even pay the guys? What kind of creative accounting is this? So after all their deductions, they come to a $14,000 deficit. Welcome to the shark-infested cesspool that is Hollywood. The Mercury opposition Uranus planets are in the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. In contracts, he faced off against swindling negotiations by unscrupulous parties. Since he was not savvy to the business, he was a monkey babe in the woods.
The money, they did it very well, and it was, now I come to think about it, I think, God, they really did me. They really twisted me inside out. But I was doing nothing when they got hold of me, and they paid me $450 a week for the first year on the TV show. The second year it went up to $750 a week, and the guy on the next set that had just been discovered, who had done nothing before, was making $3,000 a week. But they played it right. I'm glad they did it that way. I think of all the money that I could have made early on, but I'm glad they did it that way, because we would have got too cocky in the beginning, you see. They didn't give us money. For a year and a half, I swear to you, for a year and a half, I'd borrow, or we'd go over to Mike's and we'd switch. He'd have a meal at my house. They never laid any money on us. They kept us away from that until we'd established and we knew where we wanted to go. They kept all the money away and all the glamour. I still had the same suit after a year and a half. I didn't, I had the same car. I swear to you, like, they handled it right. They knew what they were going to do in the beginning, and they played it the same way all the way along the line. Now it's a little different, we're in a lawsuit with them,
Monkey shenanigans were part of Davy's life even when he was no longer one of the monkeys. Let's fast forward past the Monkees TV show. Davy Jones is now living in England and doing plays. So Davy was in a play called Puss in Boots, and he played Colin, the miller's son. He's in love with the king's daughter, but cannot be seen with her because he's a commoner. So he crashes a royal ball with a mask to disguise himself, which he removes when he dances with the princess. "Isn't this a wonderful night?" he says. "The night was made for dancing." In which she replies, "Oh, Colin, it's you, but my father would be furious if he knew we were together." Now the girl who played the princess would hardly ever look Davy in the eye, and her sight was always trained on his left shoulder. So he decides to get her attention. The next night he shows up in a big red clown's nose. No reaction. The next night he shows up in the clown's nose, and as they're doing their dialect, he's pointing up at his nose. No reaction. Next he tries wearing an old man's mask, and after that a series of masks. No reaction. By this time the rest of the cast is aware of what's going on and start to break up at inappropriate times. It's become a running gag. So Davy arrives on stage one night to see the actors dancing, flouncing around in their royalty wear, and then he makes his entrance in scuba diving gear. And he greets the princess with, "Which way to the beach?" Her reaction? "Oh, Colin, it's you. But my father would be furious if he knew we were together." In the meantime, the audience is laughing uproariously. The mayor of Swansea was watching and said, "Oh, it's a beautiful show, beautiful. But tell me, it must get awfully hot on stage, especially for that boy in the wetsuit." Later, the producer comes to Davy's dressing room and says, "Were you wearing a wetsuit in tonight's performance?" "A wetsuit? Don't be ridiculous. Have you any idea how hot it would get up there?" Then he opened up his closet and hung up his leotard next to his wetsuit. Anyway, he did continue to race horses in amateur contests later in life and did win at least one race at 50. Even though he's not with us anymore, he comes alive in these pages. The Gemini rising personality really jumps out at you. He's constantly making jokes throughout the book, vaudeville kind of humor. "I didn't know what it was like to sleep alone until I got married." But one time Davy was describing to his uncle how he saved the life of a girl from drowning. His uncle was skeptical. "Yeah, and I'm a monkey's uncle." Little did he know that would be one day. Gemini rising makes him a truly genuine monkey. That's all I got. See you in the next video.